Welcome to the Airflow Podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Thomas, and this is the place where Kingdom heirs go to be informed and inspired. So sit back, relax, and flow with me. Welcome back to another episode of the Airflow Podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Thomas, and today I want to focus on something that's near and dear to my heart. And I say near and dear because it's something that I believe that all of us experience at some point or another. And we probably deal with it every day just based off of the news and things that are going on in our world today. But I want to talk about fear. And I really want to break down how fear impacts us, not just mentally, but physically and just, even subconsciously in a lot of ways. Fear really can take and have a stranglehold on our lives. And when I was thinking about the word fear, there's a ton of acronyms that go with fear. And there were two that stuck out with me. And I think the two that I've chosen for this episode to really focus on, really epitomizes for me kind of the options that you have. Because even as an heir, fear should not be part of our walk, but it is natural as a human to have the feeling of fear. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So when you think about fear, there's two ways that I look at it. You can either forget everything and run, or you can face everything and rise. And, it's really simplistic. And when you think about it, when you forget everything and run, it's like, look, I'm not dealing with this. I'm out. I'll live to fight another day. Or you can have that, I'm going to just deal with it and I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to tackle whatever it is that's put in front of me. And that mentality says that, yes, I have the feeling of fear, but I didn't allow that fear to stop me from moving forward. I didn't allow that fear to prohibit me from doing the things that I've wanted to do. I've talked about doing things that I desire to do, things that I know I need to do, but I chose not to do them because the fear was so great. And so we're going to talk about that, how the impact of fear on the body, mentally, physically, even spiritually, financially, how fear can really just impact a person. So when we talk about the impact of fear, like I said before, it's I did mention it's mental, but it's really more than mental. A lot of people look at the mental aspects of fear. But there's a true physical impact when you start talking about fear, because you can put yourself in fear and be in that position so much that mentally your body reacts to that. And there's studies that show that how your mental capacity, how the mental things of how your brain and just the way you think can impact your physical body. So when you talk about impacts of fear, it can weaken your immune system. It can cause cardiovascular damage, dealing with the heart. Gastrointestinal problems, things like ulcers and IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome for those that don't know. It can cause you to have decreased fertility. Fear can. It can cause accelerated aging. And ultimately, it can cause premature death. And so a lot of people look at that and I'm like, man, fear can do that? Yeah. And we're going to talk about how fear can really do that. Because you hear people say you are what you think. Some people say you are what you eat. Some people say, but you are what you say. And all of those things are true. They're truth to all of those things. Outside of the physical health, it can impact your memory, and this is fear. When you're constantly in fear, your brain function isn't what it should be. And we'll talk about that a little bit further, how it all ties together. Mentally, you can feel fatigued. You can also go into clinical depression because of fear. And some people don't realize, they've dealt with so much and they've just been dealing with it for years. You're almost shell shocked, or you're just so jaded because it's like, I'm used to this. I'm living in fear every day. So, but you don't realize, like, you get to a place of depression. When we start talking about, the mental aspect of fear, and how the mental aspect of fear can start impacting your physical well-being, stress. And a lot of people don't know this, or they don't think about it this way, but stress is a form of fear. And so when you start understanding the basic concept of fear, there are two scenarios that really trigger fear in the human body or in the human mind. There's life or death situations. And in those life or death situations, you are kind of dealing with a fight, stay and fight scenario, or run. Or then you have the non-life or death situations. It's like where you're afraid of things that won't actually kill us, but based off our imaginations, we get to the place where it's like, you know what? I'm feeling like the same way as this is something like a life or death situation. So you have to understand that there are times where we could allow our stress, our fear to get so rampant in our life that it turns a non-life or death situation into a life or death situation, and it triggers our bodies and our minds to be in this fight or flight scenario, which is basically fight or run, but it causes us to be in this fight or run scenario. And now we're always finding ourselves in that place, even for situations where it's not life or death. It's not, a life-threatening situation. And it's crazy when I think about that, because I know for myself, I think about just different times that I've, just go through everyday things. And I wonder, how many times does my body go into a fight or flight situation, or my mind goes into that mode, my emotions get to that place, knowing it's not a life or death situation. But a lot of us, it does happen. So if you think about it, fear of rejection, that's a fear that can trigger stresses that can cause us to go into that fight or flight mode. A fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being alone, fear of missing out. You hear people say FOMO, fear of missing out, fear of being laughed at, fear of not being noticed. And all of those things will cause our fight or flight systems to kick in. And when you go back and think about it, the fight or flight system was only supposed to be triggered for life or death, life-threatening situations or death situations where, let's say, for example, walking down the street and a pit bull comes chasing you down the street. Now, at that point, your body goes into fight or flight mode, and most of us are going to take the flight mode, but it heightens us. It puts us in a situation where we're running for our lives. This is a life-threatening deal. And that is how our bodies are supposed to react. However, if we're in one of these situations of fear, and the ones I just listed off, rejection, failure, being alone, missing out, being laughed at, not being noticed, and there's other things that you can look at. Those types of scenarios puts us in those fight or flight situations, and we don't even recognize it because we get to a place where we're always in that, fear of running out. We can even talk about it from a financial situation. Some of us are in a fight or flight mode, just in our jobs, it becomes a hostile situation, and it doesn't have to be. But our fear of losing our jobs, because of, if we lose our jobs, then what? We lose our money. Or so we think. And this is where I'm trying to get, heirs of the kingdom to understand that we operate a little differently. See, if we truly believe that God is our source, and I mean truly believe that, and not just say it, and it doesn't, not wear it on a t-shirt, and we can spit Philippians 4:19 all day, but until you have it really ingrained in you, and it comes out of you in every way, that God will supply all your need. God is your source at that point. If you truly believe that and you live that you wouldn't let a job dictate your health and well-being. But it happens. And I've got a perfect example of that with me. I remember some years ago, I worked, I think I might have mentioned this before. I worked for a cable company, and I was going through, I think I mentioned that one in the episode with my wife. And at that time, it was a very stressful time for me. I mentioned, graduating from school, just bought a house, planning a wedding, my mom going through her chemotherapy and, just dealing with her cancer diagnosis at that point. And trying to graduate from school, taking, full credit and working a full-time job. So just all this stuff was going on. And so instead of me taking a step back and saying, you know what, I need to walk away from the job for a minute, maybe I should have taken a leave of absence. But I didn't. I didn't think about myself and taking care of my well-being. I stuck it out. But the fear of losing my job was so crazy. And I say all this to say this was one situation where I was on the phone, and this is when I was doing customer service work. I was on the phone. We had a customer who had a problem with their internet service. And, I guess they had been kicked around a bit by a few other reps. And so they got to me, I was gung-ho, and that was one of my things. I was always gung-ho to try to fix the problem. I wanted to be kind of a one-stop solution, or one-stop shop where you don't have to get pushed around again. I will get your problem resolved. And so I worked off of that mantra. And this gentleman was very upset. He called me out my name several times, which, I got used to that. You become kind of numb to that. Working in customer service, especially on the phones. But, I'm just dealing with this customer, called me out my name, called me, even spit out some racial slurs at me, and it was, it just really started getting to me to a place where it was like, this guy, I'm going to lose my job today. And I let that situation bother me so much because I was more afraid of losing my job than to take a leave of absence or walk away from that situation, from that customer, pass it on to somebody else. But I was afraid that if I responded a certain way, if I did a certain thing, that, I was going to lose my job. And I started thinking about everything else that went along with that. If I lose my job, then I'm not going to be able to support or do my part in terms of bringing home money for the house. I'm not going to be able to finish my school, my last year of school. My mom is sick. So all these things are going through my head. And, it was so crazy. The fear was so rampant and the stress level was so high. It was stressful to the place where, I had, I think during that, right after that call, I noticed when I got home that night, my wife was like, she looked at me and I had like a small bald spot in the side of my head. I couldn't figure out why. I didn't scratch my head. I don't know what it was. my hair literally started falling out that quick. I mean, it was crazy. But I let fear, I let that stress get to me. And so I knew at that point, I'm like, you know what? I can't allow myself to get that stressed out. I was having chest pains during that call. I had chest pains. I couldn't hardly breathe. I think I was having some kind of panic attack. I mean, it was bad. But I look at that and I say, that is what stress can do. Stress can cripple you. And it almost made me feel like I was crippled at that point. And when you're dealing with just that, I talked about, the situation where the customer was just going off, going off, going off. And I got the customer fixed. I stayed with it, but at what cost? Because I was really in pain. Chest pains, headaches, all of that stuff. But when you deal with something like that, it just, that stress level goes high. And that's why I want to talk to everybody about fear, because when you talk about fear, there comes stress. So, just to continue on, because I think I can stay at that point, because I'm sure a lot of us have felt that on our jobs, even in relationships, where it's like, I don't want to leave that relationship because of this, 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 and this. And I'm not talking about, that there are some relationships that people should not be in, and they're dealing with unnecessary warfare. And I'm not talking about those, because at that point, you've got to make a choice. That is it's not a life or death situation. Well, it can be, especially if you're dealing with something that's abusive. But, your health and well-being is more important than that fear of being alone. And how many of us have been alone and been in relationships longer than we should have because we were afraid to be alone. We didn't think we were going to find anybody else. And how much time did we waste? How many blessings did we miss from the person that God may have, has for us, because we stuck with somebody that really wasn't supposed to be with us, but because they showed us a little bit of attention and, there was a level of comfort, we stayed. But for what? What did we stay for? Stress and just trouble and drama. And that led to nothing. Those are unnecessary stresses. Those are things that fear of rejection, fear of missing out, fear of being left alone. Those types of things are fear of not being noticed. Those types of things can cause that kind of problem. So, I want you guys to listen, because, like I said, this is therapeutic for me, and I'm hoping it's really going to be that for you. One of the things that I thought about in talking about fear and stress and, just that impact to us, to ourselves, when you talk about, we become angry at times and we blame others. We get mean-spirited, we're aggressive, we're irritated, depressed, anxious. Those are things that kick in when you are in a place of fear or stress. And it's kind of part of for some people, some people call it their defense mechanism. We have a built-in alarm system that allows us to act quickly to get out of danger. And we can do that without analyzing the situation too much. That's part of our fight or flight. It's a reflex. And when you're dealing with a non-life-threatening situation and your fight or flight kicks in, some people say, I don't have filters at that time. You hear people say, well, I don't have much of a filter. That's because when they're they put themselves in a fight or flight situation when it's not necessary. And so at that point, they're not thinking, and they're just trying to make the quickest way out without any kind of rational decisions. So if you ever hear somebody say, like my wife mentioned, I'll use her for an example in this, but she talked about it in the episode 4, This Is Us. And I want you guys to go back and listen to that. But she mentioned that, when we get in an argument, we don't really have many arguments. So when we have disagreements, when we have a challenge going on, and I try to fix it, I'm trying to get the situation resolved right away. And she's like, no, let me be angry. Let me get through my anger. And then once I calm down, I'll come back to you. So she's in her fight or flight mode when there's a discussion. For me, I'm a little different because I'm like, you know what? Let's go ahead. Let's think about it. Let's get it done. Let's try to solve the problem. And in her world, she's like, no, that's not going to happen. Not at this point in time. So she goes into her fight or flight. And her fight or flight is like, I don't have a filter. I'm going, and she said it, I will say something that I didn't think about, something that I probably didn't necessarily mean, but because of the anger or the frustration or whatever I had built up at the time, wherever that was, that could have been caused by me or could have been a product of other things going on, and this one thing just triggered it. Now the situation turns into something it doesn't have to be. Now you're saying things that you can't take back, because once it comes out, it's out. You've said it. And it's hard to take that back. So for her, she wants to disengage from the conversation so that she can get herself out of that fight or flight mode, come back to a level of rationalization so that she could really dissect what she wants to say in a calmer situation. And it makes sense. And you think about that. How many conflicts have escalated because people were just in that fight or flight mode? You think about all the shootings and, all the drama that you see around the world, and you think about how many of those would have been avoided if everybody wasn't in such a heightened sense. That fight or flight, that fear mode is just, you're kicked into that thing all the time. I mean, you look at just the relations in our, the racial relations in our world. Everybody's on edge. It was almost, when we were going through the whole presidential election, everybody, I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on, everybody was on edge. Everybody was looking for the advantage. Everybody was looking, for some kind of change or to keep it the same, but everybody was just waiting for the next thing to go. And it was like, this powder keg just waiting to explode. And those things are still around. They're still there because nobody has, or people just haven't got to the place where they can sit down and have a discussion. And when you sit down and start having discussions with people and having logical discussions and try to eliminate the emotions from it, you find common ground. And you're able to resolve conflict. And that helps with just conflict resolution all around. But, that is, for me, that is where I know, that I have to make sure that I take the time to not react to things off of emotions. And it is a hard thing to do for some people, and for me, it's hard. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not hard. But I think the difference is knowing that. So when you get into those heightened situations, can you make the determination to say, this is not a situation where I am in a fight or flight mode. This isn't a situation where I need to be afraid of anything. I don't need to fear my life. So I can take a step back out of that fight or flight. I can relax a bit and I can say, hey, let's think about this a little bit. And that's a different way to look at things. A lot of people struggle with that and they don't want to do it. And I get it. I do. I really do get that because it is hard. It is a challenge. And for me, that's where I want to bring this stuff up now because I understand. I get it. We are always, it's almost like we're always in a combat zone. You watch the news, you walk out in your neighborhood, everybody is on edge. You go to the grocery store. If somebody looks at you wrong, if somebody cuts in front of you on the road, I mean, think about road rage incidents that are just up like crazy now. They are really, really, really up right now. And we don't understand, everybody's like, what's wrong with people? Why are people just doing these things? Because everybody's on edge right now. Everybody is in this fight or flight mode. And we shouldn't be. So that means everybody's walking around feeling like their life is in danger. Their life is in danger. Everybody's carrying guns. Guess what? I carry one. Why? Because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not out there looking for trouble, but I want to make sure that I'm protected and my family's protected. And it's a shame that you have to do that, but it's a survival technique. I tell my wife I would rather be caught with one than without it. And my prayer is that I never have to use it. I'm not, like I said, I'm not walking around looking to say, hey, I got a gun. I'll shoot you. That's not the reason why I have it. And I legally own it. I have a license to carry it. People don't know I carry it. They don't see it. I'm not one of those that has to show it, because I understand that if I show that I have something, that triggers people too. And see, some people don't get that, but it is a trigger for some people. If they see a weapon, you can be the nicest person, but as soon as they see that weapon, they go into a fight or flight. So just understanding, again, going back to how people are, everybody seems to be just so irritated. Or if you're in an environment where everybody's just stressed out, everybody's just, just on edge. That is something that you have to understand. Like, how do you get yourself out of that? Excuse me. How do you get out of that environment? How do you get yourself out of that mode of thinking? And you look at it and you say, okay, well, when you immediately act out, if you immediately just act out in a situation in a mean or aggressive way, your brain is already in that fight or flight mode. You're not, and at that point, you're not using all of your brain. And so that is the other piece to this process. When you go out there and you act in an aggressive manner, that is using a portion of your brain. And so the more you're around people who are stressed, who are depressed, who are angry, the more your fear networks are activated. And they grow stronger, and they just start looking at everything as a threat. So now everybody around you is a threat now. And that's just because you are put into a place where your senses are heightened and everything. You're like I said, you're always in this fight or flight mode. And you don't need to be. Nobody should be, because all those things cause you to be stressed out. It causes you to be fearful. All those fears and all those anxieties and all those things that they just constantly are hitting you. You never have a place of rest or peace, because it's always one thing after another, and it doesn't take much to trigger you. And so again, those fight or flight emotions, they get stronger. And then it's like at that point, your fight or flight reactions are just always triggered. People always say, oh, this person or that person, they're always snapping off. Don't care. It doesn't matter. You go in a situation where there's an argument about, and people say this all the time, how does an argument over a parking spot turn into somebody getting killed? And this is real life stuff that happens. How does that happen? How do you go from arguing over, the last, and this is a true story, but you're arguing over the last piece of chicken at the table around a family dinner, turns into a fight and somebody getting stabbed to death. And then afterwards, after they've calmed down and they realize what they did, that person was sorry. And it was a brother who killed his brother. because they were so triggered that their family had so many issues, and he was so triggered that he didn't think. His fight or flight was just there. He took the road that he didn't want to take. But he wasn't thinking. He was surviving. And he made a brash decision, and he had to pay for that. He lost a brother, and he lost his life in the process. But you think, why? Why over a piece of chicken? Probably wasn't even that good. But it's the point of, how does something escalate that fast? Well, it escalated because because one or both of those people were already at that place. They're already like that. That's why people don't. I mean, even now you talk about, people say, well, nobody fights anymore. You don't have fist fights. It's going straight to weapons, guns, knives, whatever they can do to take you out. The times of having a fist fight and settling it, one-on-one, and then, both people can at least walk away from it. No, it's going straight to death. I'm going to do what I can to eradicate you from this earth. Extreme measures. But that is because that's where everybody is. It is we are in a society of survival in a lot of ways, and we're not supposed to be. You can be aware, but you're not supposed to be in that fight or flight all of the time. You can't function as a normal human being that way. And you think about people who go away that's in the army or serving in some part of the armed forces. You think about that, and they come back home, and a lot of them suffer from PTSD. And people don't understand how real that is. But you think about that. They're always having to be, when they're out there in the field, and they're out there, in combat. What do they have to have? Heightened senses. They have to know what's going on around them. They have to be in a fight or flight mode. But they're trained to be more strategical, more tactical. So they're trained to be able to deal with that. And then you come back and you think about some of our inner cities, some of the rough inner cities around, where these kids who are not really involved in a lot of the things that go on the streets, they're not involved in, the gang violence and all that stuff, but they're around it. So they have to know how to operate within it. And they're not given a manual or strategies a lot of time of how to handle that kind of situation. They just exist in it. And some of them wind up getting engulfed by it. Some of them wind up, facing their demise in it. Some of them get out, but they're always in that heightened sense. That is not who we're supposed to be. And so we've got to learn how to override those, the fear system, because at that point, most of us, it's in overdrive. So how do you shift it back down? How do you dial it back? And one thing you've got to understand is that, we do have the power, but we don't recognize that power, or we don't know we have the power until we recognize we have a problem. And that's the other part that a lot of us, won't do. Growing up, going to a psychiatrist was not, or a psychologist wasn't something that we did. My family didn't really talk about that. We didn't, in the neighborhood I lived in, or just around the people I was around, that wasn't something that they had discussions about. I went to go see my counselor today, my psychologist today. I went to go see, somebody to talk through my thoughts and my problems. You didn't hear that a lot. People were, some people took medications, prescribed medications to cope, and that wasn't a good thing. Some people took it upon themselves to self-medicate through, drugs or alcohol, or, sex or other things. That's not good at all. And this is, being, totally transparent. It's not always too about, you don't think about, a lot of people don't think, especially when you're young, a lot of people don't think I'm going to go to the Lord in prayer and he can help me. He can, and he will if you go to him. But that's not always a lot of people's first instinct to go, or first thing to go to. But finding, being able to, and they say that with most, everybody that you hear people go through, programs for addiction. They always say the first step to recovery is to admit that you are that thing, whatever it is, a drug addict, alcohol, sex, whatever it is, you are that thing. Because until you can admit it and accept that that's what you are at that time, you will never be able to truly heal. So you have to understand that with this process of fear, you have power to stop that fear. You have power to overcome it. You have power to face everything and rise. And so there's some things that you can do. There's three things that I have looked at and studied, and I think it's pretty common things a lot of people don't think about. So I have what they call bottom-up behaviors. These are things that can help you kind of override that hyper responsive fear system that you're just always on edge. You're always in fight or flight. So some of those things are dieting. Sometimes your food and changing your diet can help to bring down those stress levels and those fear levels. You can look at exercise. Sometimes people just need that. Their body is just so wound up. They just need to go let off some steam. They need to get out there, exercise, sweat a little bit. And that's why a lot of people, when they do exercise afterwards, you ever notice that you think clearer? And, I say this all the time to people. Like, after getting to start the workout is one thing. But once I'm done, oh man, it's great. Once I'm done, I'm thinking clear. It's like, wow, I can, there's points where I can, after I work out and I take a shower and I eat and I'm kind of just sitting there relaxing, I find myself able to pray better, to seek God at a different place, because my body has calmed down. I've physically let out some of that stress, some of that pressure, some of that fear, some of those things that built up in me. Now I'm thinking differently. Now I can see things. I'm more rational at that time. And there's a different, that's why it's good to be able to do that. So that's one of the things, seeking social support. As I mentioned, going to see, a licensed psychologist, talking to them about what you're going through. People say, I don't want to talk to them. They don't know me. God gave them talent to be able to come out there and to help you navigate through what you're dealing with from an honest, perspective that, we all need to hear. I mean, you can also, and some people don't think about this, pets. There's some people that have emotional support pets, like dogs. I see them a lot. And they're becoming more prevalent, especially with young kids. And sometimes it's just a little thing. Just something small. People think, well, their kid is just always wound up, or they're having all these anxieties, and then they have this pet. And if you get one of those, and it's not just go grab any pet. There are pets that are trained to be that emotional support for somebody who's going through, anxieties or has trouble at that point in time. That's something you can definitely look into. Nature. How many times do you go, for those that travel or just take hikes even locally, and you see something like a nice waterfall, you see the water flowing, and you're like, man, this is so peaceful. It's so relaxing, and you can just sit there and meditate and reflect on life. See, the reason why I like going to the beach I like swimming. I love getting in the water, playing with the kids and all that stuff. That's cool. I love that. But the other part is I like to just be in the waves, just looking at all of God's beauty. Like just looking out in the ocean and just looking out for miles and you don't see anything but an occasional bird flying by, or maybe a boat that's way out there. Like, to me, just seeing that even from afar, staying close to a beach and being able to see the water, it's like, man, look at that. Taking a walk in the woods and just seeing the different elevations, all that stuff. I mean, being around nature, because it brings you one with God, it brings you one with yourself. It takes you out of your environment. So things that take you out of your environment usually will allow you to, come down from that high of being in fight or flight mode. And that is always good. That's why it's always good for people to get vacations in. And I wish that, people would be able to start getting away. And it's not extravagant. Just going to a different city that may be something that you wouldn't do normally. Drive into a bed and breakfast out in the country somewhere and just experiencing life at a slower pace. That is something that will take you out of your normal routine and get you out of that environment where you can unplug from your job, even unplug from technology. Just say, you know what, I'm going camping somewhere where I won't have a signal unless I need to. I'm not going to be on social media. I'm not going to be, responding to phone calls, FaceTime messages, and text. I'll let everybody know where I'm at. If you need to get me, if there's an emergency, or if I have an emergency, I can get in contact with somebody. But other than that, I'm off the grid for a while. But a lot of us won't take that time because we have fear that, we get away. We got to come back to the job. We get away from our job for a while. Well, I don't want to take a vacation because guess what? If I take a vacation, then I'm going to have that, whatever days I'm off, I'm going to have that much work piled up on me when I get back. So I just choose not to take a vacation unless I can find a gap in where I don't have a lot going on at work. And what happens is that gap never happens. So you start calling vacations long weekends where you just go visit family somewhere. And don't get me wrong, that's fine, but you're not really getting away for yourself. You're not taking the time for yourself or even your spouse or your family just to get out. And one of the things that I enjoyed doing with my family when the pandemic first started last year, back in March, one of the things that I'm glad we did, towards May when they got out of school, was we got out of the house. It was still, pandemic was still it was heightening up more so at that point. But we said, you know what, we're going to go. And we went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. We got a nice cabin. We didn't go any places, but we went on a hike. Went to a waterfall, and it was a great time. We took a nice little 3-mile hike. Saw this nice waterfall. Took pictures. Kids got in the water. We, just got out to do something because in this house that we were living in, it was like, man, we love each other, but we were going crazy. But we wanted to be safe, and so we went and did that. And that was one of the best things we could have ever done. Some of the best money we could have ever spent was just taking that time. And it wasn't, we took a long weekend, maybe 4 days. But it was the best. And the kids enjoyed it. We all enjoyed it. And it was just an opportunity to get out of our norm, to break away from the realism that, we're in a pandemic and we really can't be around people. We didn't go shopping and do some of our normal things that we would have done when we go up to Gatlinburg. We took a chance and walked downtown Gatlinburg. And we literally did that for 10 minutes. We parked, walked around, saw too many people out. And we said, you know what? Let's just go back home. Stopped and grabbed something to eat and went back to the cabin and just hung out there. But we were grateful for that, just to be able to get away. Sometimes it's just those little small things. Another thing is, they say, is a regulation ritual. Meditation, praying, breathing rituals, things that when you get to a place where you feel like your anger is rising, you feel an attitude coming on, you feel yourself going into that fight or flight mode, taking a second and just saying, okay, let me breathe, let me work through this. Let me go pray. And for those that are not praying people, let me go meditate. And you can pray and meditate. But taking time to step away from the situation, step away from the environment, and just say, let me go center myself this way. Do all three of those things: breathe, meditate, pray, but do something. It's important. It's very important. And then the other thing, so we talked about bottom up behaviors, which are diet, exercise, seeking social support, pets, nature, things like that. The second one was regulation rituals, where you talk about meditation, prayers, breathing rituals. And the third one is, mindset. If you want to override your hyper responsive fear system, changing your mindset. How do you change your mindset? Positive affirmations, your language. I'm in a community with my man of God, Apostle Amos L. Howard, and it's talking about wealth, and that it's okay to talk about wealth. And it's funny that we have to talk about that, because being wealthy is seen to be a bad thing for some reason. People associate wealthy people as bad people. That's not the case. But nevertheless, everybody doesn't think the same. So sometimes you have to get into a community with people who are like-minded, so that way you can express what you need to express and talk through things that you need to talk through, so that you can get to the place where you need to be. And sometimes being able to change your mindset, it starts with you can do. You can control your mindset, but the other part is, you have to be able to say these things. So if you have to find you some positive affirmations online just to get you started, look for I am statements, or you make your own I am statements. If you've got a fear of, low self-esteem, I am handsome, I am pretty, I am beautiful. You have to feel good about you. That's most important, because for people to truly see how important, how special, how handsome, how pretty, whatever it is that you think you're not, people see it, but they also want to know that you believe it. You've got to believe it about yourself. And it's not a cockiness. It's confidence that I know that God created me, that I'm special. I am not. It's not that I'm better than anybody, but I'm different. I'm one of a kind. And so my one of a kind self, there's somebody out there for me, that's specific for me. And so you speak that, but you understand that until that point, I am special. I am important. You are kind. You are smart. You are kind. What was that on the Help movie? But you are. You have to say that and believe that about yourself. So being able to change that mindset, positive affirmations. I am rich. I'm not a failure. I am successful. And not let people speak negatively in you. When somebody does that, you respectfully decline that and say, no, I am not that. I am this. And they may look at you like you're crazy, and they may be like, oh yeah, you want that positive stuff. Like, yeah, I am. And you'll find out, when you change your mindset, you change the way you think, and you change the way you speak, you are going to shed off a lot of people who you thought were with you, because they were only with you because they knew either they thought that you were beneath them, that you would never rise up above them, or they basically used you to kind of balance off themselves and say, oh, well, this person's always negative, this, that, and the other. So I know if I can kind of use them as the bar, I'll be good. And they want to keep you in that box. But the minute that you surpass their expectations of you and you really start thinking more about yourself, well, it's a problem. And you'll lose people who weren't supposed to be there in the first place. Your true friends, your true people, your true support group, those will be the ones that will step up and that will really show you who support you and help you to get to that place. They won't be a hindrance. And there's a huge difference in that. There's a huge difference with people who are with you that are supporters. They're helping to guide you. That is the community you want. You want to have people that balance you out. You want to have people who bring you back down to be humble. But that's all part of, trying to keep a positive mindset, keep yourself in a position where you are always in a positive state of mind, even when there's something even a challenge comes up. And I find myself now always correcting myself. Just like a second ago, I was going to say, when a problem comes up, it's not a problem, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. But we're gonna get through that because we're gonna face everything and rise. That's that mindset of fear. Okay, it's a challenge. This may be difficult, but you know what? We got it. We're gonna get through it. I'm gonna get through it. How many times do people walk away from a job opportunity because of that? Oh, it's difficult. Or other people say, you don't want to do that because they treated me wrong and this, that, and the other, but God told you to go to that job or God told you to do that. But you took the advice of somebody else. I've had situations like that. People say, oh, you don't want that job. You don't want to go work there. And I went there and did it and found out that it was easier. It was different. The interview process was easy. The whole thing was catered towards me, and God set it up just perfectly for me. But why is that? Because I didn't follow what everybody else said. I followed God on that. And I didn't let fear set in because what other people said, because they're in their fear mindset. And some people some people are in their fear mindset all the time, and they want you to stay in. They want you to be in that fear mindset. They don't want you to, just like in this economy, or when the economy was going bad, and be like, oh, you don't want to spend money on that, or you don't want to do this because if you spend money on that, it's going to be wasted and you're going to lose this and lose that. And everybody's in fear, and that's all they're talking about is money lost, money lost. And you tell them, hey, I'm a money magnet. Money comes to me freely and clearly. I perpetually harvest everything that God has for me. Because you start speaking stuff like that, it changes the mindset. It changes you, but it's going to also cause people. It's going to either attract people like you, or people that are in the same vein as you, or it's going to repel those who don't believe the same as you. And it's okay if they do. It is okay. And you got to be okay with that because you're trying to better yourself. So I want to take the last little bit of time to talk about, really dig into the body with fear. Fear was evolved. It evolved in us to protect us. But again, I want to make sure I preface it with, it protects us in life-threatening situations. So fear starts in our brains. So when you get scared, your brain sets off kind of an elaborated and a coordinated response. So even if there isn't a threat, it still sets off this response. And then from there, you start to figure out, is this a life or death situation? Or is this just something that, I don't need to worry about? But there are also physical changes that take place in your brain during that time. And it can go from your brain all the way to the muscles in your legs. And it can happen in seconds. How many times have you been in fear and you felt like your legs just stuck? Or you felt like your leg muscles just tensed up? or almost like you've been running, or your legs just got tight all of a sudden. When something fearful happens. That's caused by our sympathetic nervous system, which that sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight response. So you have what's called an autonomic nervous system, and that manages your reflexes like breathing, digestion, heartbeat. See, how many people really understood that, fear and the response that happens in your brain can set off a chain of events throughout your body that impacts the part of your nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, that starts dealing with breathing, digestion, and heartbeat. Now, I told you earlier that fear can cause things like ulcer, it can cause all kind of other problems, which is stress, which is a form of fear. So let's look at your autonomic nervous system as sort of a control panel, like a system control panel. You think about in a power plant or something like that, and you've got all these gauges and levers and knobs, you're turning all that stuff. So fear kicks in. So you have a situation and fear starts. And what happens is that system goes into overdrive. So the first thing is the adrenaline kicks in. And everybody knows when adrenaline kicks in, what happens? Some people, your heart starts beating fast, your body temperature rises, some people start to sweat, just different things start happening. But also what happens during that point is blood flow decreases from your frontal lobe of the brain. And that is where the logical thinking happens. So now blood leaves that part of the brain. So now you're not using that part of the brain. It's not operating the way it's supposed to. Blood is leaving from that part of the brain. And then it goes over into your amygdala, which is the animalistic side of your brain. That takes over. Now your heart rate and blood pressure and your breathing rate increases, along with muscle tension. So now you're going from the rational side, which is the human side, to the more animalistic side of your brain. Blood flows, everything's increasing, muscles getting tighter. Now your pupils are dilating. Now see, this goes back to the physical part. Your pupils start dilating to allow you to see better so you can see the threat. Why is that important? Because your pupils dilate to see a physical threat, but there's no physical threat. There was no life or death situation a lot of times. But this is where people start to react because they're in a fight or flight response system now. They're reacting to people as if they are threats. So now their eyes are getting bigger. Then you start thinking other things like your blood flow moves from your extremities. So it goes from, different parts of your body. It flushes away from your hands. So now your hands become cold and clammy. How many times have you been in fear and you've been around somebody who they're nervous or they're scared or they're just a lot of fear? You shake their hand or you touch their hands and their hands are cold and they feel clammy. Blood is left there. This is now you're in the zone. Your adrenaline's pumping. You are now in the animalistic part of your brain. You are in fight or flight mode. Now your digestion slows down. Your body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. So you think about that. Now you have fully gone into this mode. There is no in between. Everything is a threat. Everything is heightened. And a lot of us are living in that every day. Every day we're living in that. That's why the fight or flight response kicks in think about public speaking. Or when you're in a crowd. People get nervous. They, think about when somebody messes up or they do a public speaking and, they get questioned and some people react in a different way. Some people just get nervous and run away. That's fight or flight. Some people stand there and they get offensive. They get offended about the situation. They They start yelling and screaming and becoming belligerent because somebody's asking them a legit question, but they're already nervous and they're fearful about the situation. They just want to be left alone. But you're responding to every situation as if you're always running from a predator. And that fight or flight system is trying to keep you alive. But we're not meant to stay in that mode. And so it's important. It's really important that we understand that as heirs, we are not supposed to stay in a fight or flight mode. Fight or flight mode does not mean that you're not aware of what's going on around you. Awareness has to be there. It's not saying, turn a blind eye. But it's saying everything does not have to be a threat to you. Everything does not have to be, a play on your life. Now, there are some situations where you go in there and you might be right. And you have to know how to rationalize that. And that is the difference. That's what separates us from a beast in the field. Because we have the ability to rationalize. We're supposed to. When we allow ourselves to. When we come down off of that fight or flight, we say, okay, let me breathe for a second. Let me calm down. Let me think this through. Case in point. I'm the type of person where if there's something that goes on with my child, the first thing that I want to do is I want to find out what happened. I want to hear what happened with the situation. So if there's a situation with one of my children and a teacher, and my child comes home or, I get a call from school and they're like, hey, so-and-so did this. And so I go to the school. Now I'm upset because I got to go to the school because something happened, or not upset, but, I'm like, okay, what's going on? I got called to the school. And so my first response isn't to say, this person's always doing this and, just get kind of, be very reactive. I ask my child what happened. I ask the teacher what happened or whatever, the other side. And I try to figure out what's wrong. You try to figure out what happened, hear everybody's side of the story. Now, as I tell my kids, I'm always going to defend you, but I need to know the truth. Because see, I do know my kids, and I know that there's certain things that they can and they can't. That I know they can do, and I know that they won't do. Because I know my kids. Now I don't put anything past them. I'm not saying that they won't do. That there's things that they won't do. I know they will, and they'll try it. But I also understand in certain situations that ain't something my kid would do. You have to prove that one to me. But I want to hear the story. But I've seen situations where I've gone and not because of my kid. I've seen there in the first thing, I've seen a mother, walk in there. I don't know who they are. I've seen them walk in there and just go plumb off on everybody without even finding out what's going on. Because why? They're in that fight or flight mode. They're just right in, upset because they had to leave work early. Upset because their kid is called out in the classroom. Upset for all these things, and they sit down and find out, and the kid tells the truth, and it's like, yeah, I did it, and it's like, okay, now you've caused this big scene, for what? For what? Now, I'm not saying that there aren't times where it is warranted for you to be upset, but I'm like, find out what's happened. Try to be rational about the situation. Everything does not have to be, they're going to know me, they're going to respect me, they're going to know I don't play. See, then you have people operating with you in fear. And so when they feel fear, now their fight or flight is taking place. So now they feel like, oh, so and so mom or daddy coming up here, we're gonna have to deal with this. And now they got to get their situation together and figure out, how do I want to handle this? Or they could be another one of those people that they're in fight or flight. They be like, they better not come up here acting crazy. I'm gonna tell them about themselves. How many of us have said that? Or, my boss, they've been acting crazy. They got one more time, and I'm gonna tell them off. Blah blah blah. We've all probably said it. I know I have. You know, and these are the things that I want everybody to really think about. We do not have to live in fight or flight mode. It is there to protect us for life or death situations. If you are not in a life or death situation, take a step back, breathe, meditate, pray, exercise, get professional help, do something, but figure out, why am I always angry? Why am I always stressed out? Why am I always in fear that I'm going to lose something? Something's going to be taken from me. Why am I always in fear? Like, ask that question. Is it my environment? Is it a relationship? Is it just me? I mean, what is it? Like, step back and think about that. Get away. Go. I mean, if you're in a state that, look up, like, hey, are there any nature hikes or where I can go and take a walk and see a waterfall? Go do that. Like, get away and just reflect. Sometimes it might just be, go get a hotel room for a night, just you by yourself, and just be with you and your thoughts. Like, think about that. Like, take a second and get away from that mindset. Like, how many senseless killings amongst family could have been avoided? How many of those fights could have been avoided? See, when you can take a step back and breathe and come off of that fight or flight mode, now you can have conversations that are difficult, but everybody's coming from a good space. Everybody's coming, they're chilled out, and they just want to find out, how can we get to common ground? How can we figure out what's going on? How can we coexist? I've had several of those conversations with employees of mine, with managers of mine, with different levels of people, co-workers, just, peers, I've had those conversations, and it's not easy. Because from my perspective, I don't like dealing with drama, but I don't like dealing with drama, but I don't like dealing with drama. So if I'm at work and I got drama going on, I like to nip it in the bud. The same thing when I'm at home. If there's something going on in the house, I don't like to just sit there and deal with it forever. I don't like walking around on eggshells, and I don't like feeling like something's about to explode. So I'm going to say something about it, or try to get it out. And sometimes I can be forceful with it, as I've said before, but my intention is to try to break that up, to get the fear away from me by facing everything, and rising. I don't do well at just, I try not to just forget and run, because it's going to always come back, and I'm going to think about that situation, which happens to me a lot. So I'm going to stop there. And I really want everybody to just stop and think about just fear. Are you going to face everything and rise? Or are you going to forget everything and run? Now, there are times where you might have to run. And those are those fight or flight situations. And there are times where God will direct you to say you need to walk away from that. And those times are okay. But if you're always in fight or flight, and most people get to that place, you find yourself constantly running or constantly fighting. But most of the time, you're not dealing with the situation. I kind of, this last story, I remember there was a company that I was working for, and things had gotten so hectic, and I was like, I don't even think I'm gonna stay at this company. And I was ready to leave. I had only been there for about a few months. I was ready to leave. I was like, man, I gotta get out of here. It's too stressful. It's crazy. This, that, and the other. I need to make some more money. God, I know you brought me here. And I had to step back on myself and say, okay, there's, fear about being here. They had let some people go. We were working crazy hours, so we're tired. People were stressed out. I'm new, so I'm trying to, create a good perception about myself amongst my my colleagues. I wasn't a manager, amongst my colleagues and my management and things of that nature. And, I was just so ready to go. And so God just told me, it's not, you just got here. I put you here for a reason. Just relax. And so I did, and a couple months later, I wound up getting promoted into a manager position. My manager got fired because he wasn't doing the job, but I was, I was doing the job that he was supposed to be doing. I was showing leadership and things like that. And see, if I would have just ran from that situation, which I could have done. I had job opportunities that I could have gone to, but if I just would have went and ran, I would have missed out on what God had for me. And during that point in time, I had promotions. I got promotions like 3 or 4 times within a 2 year period. You know, financial bonuses and title changes. But I wouldn't have did that if I would have ran. So sometimes it's just being able to hear the voice of God. Take a step back. Pray about it. And this podcast is for Kingdom Heirs, but I'm just telling you, if you're wavering in your faith and your relationship with God, I always would beg you to seek Him first. But if you're not at that place, take a step back and just meditate. Think about it. Breathe. Remove yourself from the situation. Take a day off. Take a half day. Mental health day, whatever it is. Step away from it. And then be able to remove yourself, think about it, and then come back to it and find out what it is that you're supposed to do. As Kingdom Heirs, that's the opportunity for us to see God at a different place. That is how you get the calm to the storm. That is what we talk about. You got to get off the boat to walk on water. See, it takes faith to get off the boat. You get off the boat, it takes some faith to do it, but to stay off and continue to walk in troubled water when the storms and the things of life are underneath your feet and you always think that you're going to drown. And you look down at your problem instead of keeping your eye up to Him. So that's what fear does. Fear keeps you looking down. When Peter got off the boat, he was good. He was cool. He looked at Jesus straight ahead and he was just walking. Then he started looking down. He saw the storms. He saw his problems. He saw the challenges. He saw the things that caused him fear, great fear. And Jesus said, stay focused on me. But he gave up to his fear. And he focused on his fear. He focused on the things that stressed him, and he started sinking. And that's what we're doing. That's what we do a lot. We focus on the negative. We focus on the negative so much that we miss out on the opportunity to focus on the things, the goals and the dreams that we have. Why? Because we're always looking at something. We're always looking to survive. We're always looking to survive that one thing or survive to make it to the next day. I don't want to, we're always looking for a way to just get by. That's survival. That's not how we were meant to live. That's not how our kingdom heirs are meant to live, y'all. We're not. And it's a perpetual cycle of just surviving to get by to the next thing, to get by to the next check. And how much of that fear mentality is in our lives, and how much, for those that have kids, how much are we pushing that out to our children? A poverty mindset is fear. And you can say, well, you talking about money and blah, blah, money don't, yeah. But you can think with a poverty mindset. You don't have to be, you don't have to be wealthy in terms of money. You can be wealthy in a lot of stuff, but how much of that wealth are you missing out because of you being in fear? You stopped yourself from doing because of fear. I ain't talking about spending money. And some of us have failed money tests because of fear. That could have got us to the next breakthrough. Fear can be crippling. I said that earlier. Fear can be crippling. we've got to get to a place, and I say we because together, we're together in this. We've got to get to a place where fear is not going to cripple us and stop us from getting to where we're going to be. Because when we get to that place, man, just imagine what our life will be like. Imagine what this world would be like when everybody's now walking and living in that fight or flight mode. Imagine how many conversations you can have amongst different races and religions where you can start to have an understanding and develop a tolerance for differences. But there's so much misinformation and everybody's on edge, and you say one little thing. I mean, I know people, I see people get off of social media because they see things and they get triggered. There are people who purposely, they call it trolling, purposely go on posts that are meant to be positive or to celebrate somebody, and they just go on there and they put some negative comments just because. They call it trolling, but those people are just people that are in fight or flight mode all the time. They just want to argue. They want to be in a bad place, and they want to help make other people be in that place. I can put up something that says, I love God, and somebody come in trolling like, well, if God was so good, you love him so much, then why did he let this happen? Why did he let that happen? Why is COVID here? Why is that? I mean, some of those are legit questions, but you got to go back and think about it. Like, dude, I'm just here happy. Why can't I be happy today? Why can't I have some joy in my life? Well, how can you have joy when all these people are dying? Well, I can have joy because I can have joy for what God has done for me. Now, I'm praying for everybody to be healed and to that COVID, it's not coming to them, or any sickness or disease or infection or anything or death. Like, that's my prayer. But I'm still going to celebrate the good things. I'm going to celebrate the things that I know God continues to do for me. The reason why I'm here is because of him. I'm going to celebrate that. I'm not going to let fear stop that. But that's what fear will do. Fear will tell you, no, you don't, God, you can't say nothing about God because people are going to say, question you about how you going to say there's a God when, hundreds of thousands of people are dying and we got people getting killed every day for senseless things. And how is that? Well, I can speak that because I'm still here. My kids are still here. My wife is still here. My family is still here. And I pray that for everybody. But I know that everybody's not going to get that, just like wealth. I want everybody to be wealthy, but I know everybody's not going to be wealthy. God wants all of us to be wealthy. Mind, body, spirit, financially, emotionally. God wants us to be wealthy. We were created to be wealthy, but we're all not going to get there. Just like we're all not going to get to heaven. But that's a different story. That's a different day. So again, I just want to thank everybody for listening to this podcast episode today. I pray that you got something from it. Like I said, these sessions are therapeutic for me, and I hope that they are the same for you. If you want to continue this conversation, please feel free to reach out to me at airflowpodcast@gmail.com. That's airflowpodcast, HEIRFLOWPODCAST @gmail.com. Send me reach out to me, guys. Check out my Facebook page, www.facebook.com/airflowpodcast. Send me a message there. I would love to hear what people have to say about fear and share some stories about fear for those that want to be transparent. I've got plenty of them. I've got plenty of stories. And I'm sure we all do. And it's okay. But let's start doing some self-reflection and figuring out what is stopping us from living our best life. What is stopping us from being the heirs we're supposed to be? What are those things? What's stopping us from starting a business? What's starting us from that weight loss journey? What's stopping us from, getting the house that we've desired for years? What's stopping us from the car that we want? What's stopping us from, getting our blood count at the right place? That's what's stopping us from going back to school to get the degree that we always wanted to get, but people said you're too old to get it now. What's really stopping us? What's really stopping us? Fear. We just gotta look in the mirror and say, I'm tired. I'm tired of losing this battle. I'm taking my life back. And I'm going to speak nothing but positive things. I'm going to put myself in a positive environment. I would just also say, there are plenty of things online that you can start listening to and tapping into that's audio, that's audible, I should say. There are affirmations on YouTube you can look up. There are different things that you can go into when you want to, talk about changing, from a poverty mindset to a wealth mindset. There are books you can read. Everybody's favorite book is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Steve Harvey has a great book called Jump, and I've mentioned that several times. I will mention my man of God, Apostle Amos L. Howard. The Earth is Your Real Estate. He has a book that's out. And it talks about his journey of faith and understanding that everything on the earth is ours, but we got to go out there and take it. It's not just going to be given to us. We got to take it and give us the tools to do it. Those things, you can't do that in fear. You can't. I wouldn't be here right now if I let fear stop me. I would have, forgotten everything and ran. Like, I'm not doing this podcast because I'm afraid of what people are going to say about me. I was in fear. I mentioned this the first podcast. I was in fear of just how my voice sounded. I didn't want to get on here because I don't want to sound stupid. What if I mispronounce a word? What if I, do this or do that, or, ask a dumb question? At some point, you just got to say, you know what? I'm just going to be me. And I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. God gave me this to do, and I'm going to do it. You got to have that same bold mentality too. And I know everybody has it in them to do it. So I love y'all. If y'all haven't heard that today, know that I love y'all. You are loved. Jesus loves you. And don't ever forget that. Fear cannot take you out if you don't allow it to. And if you need counseling, if you're employed, please check out your employee EAP program. There are some jobs offer, benefits and around that. Your benefits may cover you to go to so many sessions. And sometimes you just need to get to talk to people. Talking to your mama and your daddy or your family ain't always the best. Because they're just going to tell you some of the same stuff and just perpetuate some of the same things that's got you in this place of fear now. Sometimes. I'm not going to say all the time. But go get some help. It's okay. And you know what? If people laugh at you, they're laughing at you because they probably need it too. But they're so stuck in their own patterns and their old ways that they can't break free from it. And you're going to be ostracized just because you're trying to do something different. So, as I said, I love everybody. I pray that you got something from this on this episode of the Airflow Podcast. Again, join me next Friday as we have a new episode dropping. I'm so excited about how this thing is really turning out. As I always say, I get great feedback and get great response. And I'm always looking forward to getting feedback from everybody that gets a chance to come out and download the podcast and listen. So please support us. The website is airflowpodcast.com. Again, that's airflowpodcast.com. HEIRFLOWPODCAST.com. Every episode is uploaded there. That is where they live. And then if you have a podcasting preference from a platform perspective, I'm on Apple, I'm on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon, Google. I'm on all the major ones. So, just go and search for Airflow Podcast. Once you find me, please subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll get an alert saying, a new episode is available. I would love for you guys to really listen. And again, I ask for the support because I want to make sure that when people are hearing it, and if it's something that you think other people may like or may need to hear, share it with them. please share with them. I appreciate your support. I'm asking for your support. And I believe that the more support, obviously, the better this will grow into, and the more things. And I want not just your support, but I want to also get your feedback. So, like it if you on Facebook, like our Facebook page. Subscribe to the Facebook page. Subscribe on the website. Subscribe on your podcast platform. Share it with people. And if you think there's some things that I need to work on, please. I am not above criticism. If you come to me in love and support me, I am going to take that and I'm going to use that to grow. So I appreciate that. I thank everybody again. We're all in this together. Fear cannot take us out because we are kingdom heirs. And as kingdom heirs, we were created and designed to flow in the blessings, to flow in the things that God created us to flow in. And that's to be prosperous in every aspect of our lives. So again, my name is Ricky Thomas, and I thank you for taking time to come out and flow with me. And remember, new episodes of the Airflow podcast come out every Friday at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. So be on the lookout for those episodes, where I will continue to bring information so that you can draw inspiration to be the kingdom heirs that you were created to be. Again, have a great rest of your week, and I will see you all next week. I pray that you are blessed and safe. Love you guys.